Well, welcome back into 6 sessions of Meant to Live. We are on session 2 today, good news. And I really, truly hope and pray that last week's video and your time with the questions and hopefully a few friends along the way were a great primer for today. Now, let me just give you a quick recap in case you missed it. We introduced last session the core call to life that emerges from Genesis chapter 3, where Adam and Eve, who were in a beautiful relationship with God, go their own way and they separate themselves from the God who is life. And so they're now spiritually dead. Now, the important thing is that we noticed God going out into the garden and the God who is life calling to them, "Where are you?" And that scene, and of course, the original call into being are the foundations of this call to life. And he is still calling us today, and we want to pay attention to that. Now, I said last time that we're going to focus on a couple of things. One is detecting this call to life, and 2 is realizing the power that comes with that. So if we're talking about focusing on detecting life and embracing life and realizing more power, life and power, there is no better place to look than the gospel, otherwise known as the good news. And that's our topic for today. Now, you may right away be thinking, oh, this is for people who don't know Jesus. I know Jesus. I can cruise through this session. Wrong. This is for you. It's for me. We don't just want to take in and kind of talk a good talk about the gospel, think about the gospel. We want the gospel to constantly empower us to new and wonderful levels of life. So today, I want to share with you how, for me, just a few years ago, before I wrote the book, God called me to a whole new level of life while I was examining the gospel. Listen, there is way more in you than you know, and I want to help you unleash that. So let's talk about the gospel. In a very sort of classic 4-point structure, this is the gospel, the good news. It's basically the meta-narrative or the overarching story of the scriptures. And here are the 4 points, again, in this 4-point structure. It starts with creation. So we were created, as we've been talking about in the beginning of Genesis, we were created to be in relationship with God. Everything was good, and that's good news. And then we have the fall. Again, what we talked about last session. This fall is where we've gone our own way and we've separated ourselves from the God who is life. Now, we're still created in God's image, but that image is now veiled and scarred, and there's sort of a curse over all creation. That's bad news. Point number 3 in the gospel is Jesus, and Jesus is God's solution to this point number 2, to the bad news, to the sin issue and the curse over all creation. So that's point number 3, Jesus, and the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus is good news. Point number 4, again in this classic 4-point structure of the gospel, point number 4 is the recreation or restoration of the kingdom. Recreation, remember step 1, it recreates that, and it's a restoration of that kingdom where the lion and the lamb will lie down again together. The curse is completely gone. No more tears. That is very, very good news. Now, what I'm about to tell you, I fleshed out with some pastors and leaders and groups of people that I was sort of speaking to long before I wrote my book, Meant to Live. Now, at that time, a few years ago, I remember sitting with one of these leaders, and actually he was our worship arts leader at the time, and I remember going into his office and just saying, "Ron, can we talk a little bit? I've been thinking a lot about the gospel these days." And so we sat together, and I said, God's been showing me something, and I've never really noticed it before, and I just kind of wanted to sort of share this with you and wondered what you thought. So he's like, "Yeah, go ahead." So I said, "Okay." So again, that sort of classic 4-point structure, I noticed something about humanity in this. Point 1 of the gospel, good news, that we were created to be in relationship with God. And if you look at humanity, people were created glorious, made in God's image. We have this imago Dei, the image of God. We're image bearers and we're glorious. Point number 2 is that there's a fall, and that humanity, of course, though we've gone our own way, still bear the image of God, but that image is veiled, right? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And I said, okay, so point number 3 of the gospel is Jesus. And in Jesus, we become new creations, right? The old is gone, the new is come. And in fact, the scriptures teach us that we are, this glorious being is sort of glorified again, and in fact, carried from glory to glory. It's sort of this ever increasing glory. And then point 4 of the gospel is the restoration of the kingdom, or recreation, where humanity is fully glorified once more. And we see this in scripture, again in letters like 1st and 2nd Corinthians. We see it certainly in Revelation, where we are fully glorified once more. So I said, does that sound right to you? And he said, absolutely. I said, there's a lot of glory on humanity. And he said to me, I really hadn't noticed that before, Nancy. And I said, neither had I. 75% of the good news of God's love to the world through Christ is humanity's glory, your glory. Now you got to hear this. All glory is for God and from God, through God and to God. And you're probably already thinking, I know this. We were made to glorify God. And it's easy to sort of gloss over, dismiss, or even disown our God-given glory. Whoa, 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 be careful here. Or we can focus so much on the brokenness and the covering part and the hiding part, we miss our glory. But I want to explore, for a few minutes with you, I want to explore glory for a moment. 3 points about glory. Number 1, what does it mean to glorify God? Well, here's my definition. To make God's magnificence evident. That's how you glorify God. Make God's magnificence evident. Number 2, there is way more in us than we know. Now, I want you to take this in. Have you thought recently about how amazing all creation is? Amazing the whole universe is, which is, of course, precisely why we are called to treat our little portion of the universe, the planet, with such great care. Norway's northern nights, lit up, absolutely gorgeous, astronomical, actually. And I was in the Sahara Desert last summer, actually, with my husband, Cam. And we were staying with some Bedouins for a couple of days in the desert. And we actually spent a night in the white desert sand, where it's all white, miles and miles of just this white, gorgeous sand. And here's what was amazing. Dotting the landscape, again, for miles in this white desert sand, were these huge statues, these gorgeous sculptures that were comprised of just the white sand and the wind. That's it. And they had formed these structures that looked like mushrooms all over. And some of them looked like animals. Like there was a little bunny and there was a bird. And they felt like if you touched them, they would just crumble. They felt like, meringue, really phenomenal. I think about Australia. Places like Australia have crazy creatures that actually really crack me up. They have these mountain goats that are kind of created to be these cliffhangers. It's like their hooves are sort of heavy-duty suction cups. And they just hang on these cliffs. They can climb down, climb up, and it's crazy. When I think about platypuses, they have otter feet, they have a tail of a beaver, and the bill of a duck. It's like God said, I'm going to repurpose some of my former work and have a little fun here. And I could go on and on because our planet is really quite amazing. Never mind the whole universe, which is absolutely phenomenal. But listen, you and I, humanity, are even more extraordinary than nature and animals. So you may say, well, I'm no Mount Fuji, Nancy. I'm not majestic like that. No, maybe not. But God created humanity as his crown jewel. We were created just a little lower than the highest archangels, the heavenly hosts, the cherubim and the seraphim. You really want to take this in. You are glorious. We were made in his image. Our capacity to love, to share. We see a movie, we're like, oh my golly, did you see this? Or better yet, want to come to the movies with me? We'll share popcorn, right? Capacity to share. Our capacity to think abstract and complex ideas. Think Einstein, Newton, Grace Hopper. Our capacity to apprehend truth, to create. Remember Michelangelo, Clara Schumann, Mary Cassatt, or Tchaikovsky. Humanity is a whole other level of creation. We are more glorious than nature and animals because we are made in God's image and we are laden with His glory. Now, the final thing I want to say about glory is that there are really two categories of glory: intrinsic or original glory and restored glory. Now, intrinsic or original glory are really points 1 and 2 of the gospel, creation and fall. That we were created glorious. We have the imago Dei, the image of God on us. And when that fall came, it is absolutely true that that was covered. It is absolutely true that that image of God was veiled, the scriptures teach. And for some people, it is heavily, heavily veiled. But regardless of how repulsive you find or disgusting you find some people, you can be sure that they still bear the magnificence and the glory of God, though it can be heavily veiled at times. Now, restored glory is what Jesus alone can do. And that's really points 3 and 4 of the gospel. Now, I don't know where you are with Jesus, and I don't know where you are with this good news, but I can tell you, and I would be doing you a serious disservice if I didn't tell you, that this point 3, this is good news. It is the key to life. It's only through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus that we have access to this kind of increasing glory, this power, this life, not just in heaven later, but now. And that is good news.